When people ask me about infrastructure investing, I like to relate it to something everybody knows a little something about, the human body. So you have a bunch of different systems that have very specific functions that are working together to create some sort of harmonious entity. I like to start with the skeletal muscular system, and this is sort of the framework that everything else is built on, right? These are your public roadways, your interstates, your waterways. And this largely falls under the purview of local municipalities as well as the federal government. And truthfully, there's not a lot of private investment opportunity there, but it is the foundation that everything else is built on. So the next thing I would start thinking about is sort of the cardiovascular respiratory system. And I like to link that to transportation. These are your seaports, your airports, your railways. It's really the lifeblood of an economy. And then I think about the digestive system as being similar to power/utility. You're really taking in energy like a natural gas or renewable energy. You put it into the system, process it, and distribute it out to the rest of the systems. And with that is the less glamorous piece of waste. So you have waste removal and water filtration systems. And then finally, I like to think of the nervous system as communications. This is really what is telling all the other systems what the systems are doing and how to operate. So this is what tells headquarters in Florida what's going on, what's coming into the seaport in Long Beach, and then from Long Beach, what goods are going to Minneapolis along the rail line. This is where you have your cell towers, your satellites, your data centers. Some of the traits that the systems/sectors have in common is that they're sort of a steady state. There's always sort of a constant steady state. Sometimes it's elevated, sometimes it's depressed, but for the most part, they're operating 24/7 and they're essential. And so what does that mean from an investment perspective? Effectively, you have stable cash flows. And a lot of times those cash flows are contractual, 10, 20, 40, even 99 years out. And frequently they're tied to inflation. And the other piece that they have in common is it's a natural monopoly. For example, you have one heart. In order to replace that heart, it's going to be a huge undertaking. If you look at a utility that's serving a certain region, in order to take that utility out, pull it out, replace everything the utility does, it's going to be a huge undertaking. A lot of capital expenditure and frankly, not likely. So you have a natural monopoly, you have steady cash flows, and what does that lead to? Effectively, strong risk-adjusted returns, and we think that's been proven out historically. We think it's a great time to be investing in infrastructure right now. There are a couple of things going for it. First of all, there's demand. Developing countries across the world have underinvested in infrastructure for a while now. For example, the United States, estimates vary, but we're nearly $100 billion underinvested on an annual basis in infrastructure, according to different studies. And then second is there's been two major pieces of legislation that have come through the United States recently. One is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and the other is the Inflation Reduction Act. And what these two pieces of legislation are doing is effectively funneling federal dollars into infrastructure investments. And on top of that, we're encouraging private investment in infrastructure as well. And we think that this legislation will ultimately lead to more legislation abroad, bringing capital both from governments as well as private parties into the space, and thus making it an attractive environment.